Okay. Should start to see folks coming in.
Yeah, I can see people. I will be able to see people, I guess, on the participants list. Just you and me at the moment.
There we go. Got a few people joining.
Yeah, I don't
Janet.
see those.
Hi, Tara. So if you look, Bruce, click the attendees, you can see them.
Oh, yeah.
Click on the right side.
Yeah, I see them. Yep.
Hey, it's nice to see everyone joining us. We are live. I believe we're broadcasting live on Facebook as well. Yep, looks like we've got it successfully working. Hallelujah. I'm Robin Jones, Director of the ABF Career Alliance, and our special guest is Bruce Smith. He's a career ally and longtime regional ambassador for the Albert Baker Fund. So welcome, Bruce. We're so glad to have you.
Well, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here and part of this very exciting moment in Cyberland.
So we've got a couple more minutes for folks to log in before we really get started. But in the meantime, what I'd like to do is do a few little housekeeping things. So for the folks that are on your computer screen at the bottom, you'll see a little green box, and then next to it you'll see a Q&A icon. If you can open that Q&A, I'm going to open mine actually as well. So in that Q&A, if you can just type your name and where you're from and say hello, so we can make sure everything's working, we'd really appreciate seeing that from you. Hey, thank you, Tara. Nice to see you, Tara. Looking for that job posting. Glad to help. Had a nice chat with Bruce about that the other day. Sally, hi, Janie. Kristen, so nice to have you. Thank you all for jumping in and helping us with that. So it looks like our Q&A is working well. I think we're good for not live on Facebook. I don't understand why that is. It shows me that we're live here. I see it working, Lane. Yeah. Yeah, it looks to me like it's working. Okay, I'm going to move ahead. Lane is giving Lane helps us with our social media. She's wonderful. I'm going to start though. I'm going to get moving. So if you can't see us, be sure that you download the Zoom application and then click the run. That way you can participate in our poll and participate in our Q&A. Hey, Deb from Roseville, that's right down the street. So nice to see you. Thank you. And our chat box has been disabled. So we'll be communicating through our Q&A. So if you got a question for me or you want to make a comment, be sure you do it in the Q&A box and I can see it and Bruce can also see it as well. So in the final wrap-up session, we'll launch a poll at that point, but you'll see that on the screen when I pop that up. So appreciate everyone being here this afternoon. So I think it'd be nice to talk a little bit about our guest. And he's kind of had a two-career path, you know, where he's in this technology world of software and sales management, and then in this theater world where he's had a theater company for a number of years and had great success with that too. So he's going to be combining some of those ideas and thoughts from both, kind of pulling from both of those disciplines during our session this afternoon. And you know, Bruce is close to Pittsburgh, is that right? Are you in Pittsburgh proper or kind of close?
Yeah, we're about 12 miles outside of Pittsburgh, a little town called Swickley, and there's a church right in Swickley.
Oh, great. That's perfect. I go to the camps, Crystal Lake, every summer and work with the staff, but I haven't been to the church there. I'd love to at some point.
Mhm.
So anyway, I again, Bruce, we're so happy, and we thank you so very much for all your work as a regional ambassador with the
Sure.
Albert Baker Fund. How long have you been an RA?
It's been about 14 years now. In
Gosh.
fact, my good friend Dan Herbert, who was chairman of the board, went to college. He and I went to college together in Eastern Pennsylvania, and he's the one that recruited me 14 years ago. So I've been doing interviews with college students for that long, and it's so enjoyable and so inspirational, really.
Well, we appreciate it. We love Dan, and we thank Dan for bringing you along and for all your hard work and great insights into that.
Mhm.
So let's get into this question that we have today, and kind of your thoughts on what are some of those important issues that you've been thinking about in today's environment.
Yeah, of course, today's environment is very different than we've all been experiencing over our careers in the past. And so I've been thinking a lot about um, the metaphysical aspect of all this. And then, of course, on the practical side, I've been working with how to do social distancing, both at the church, in reopening the church, and also in theaters. And we kind of feel like theaters will be probably the last to open up because social distancing can really be a challenge there. But I'd like to give a quote from Mary Baker Eddy's Science and Health that really helped me. I recalled it just recently, but I've worked with this quote a number of times in the past. I'll just read it. It's very quick. If selfishness has given place to kindness, we shall regard our neighbor unselfishly and bless them that curse us. But we shall never meet this great duty simply by asking that it may be done. And what's so important to me is that in my business career, especially, it's so important to actually get things done. Not just, I mean, planning is so important, and the better and more that you plan, the better outcome will be. But at some point, you just have to take action. And for any of our folks listening out there, taking action is an important step in the process in your progression overall. So I really think that that's an important part of what I've been working with. And from a sales standpoint, I've been a sales consultant for the last 15 years or so, after having a long career in sales and sales management and executive sales with some major companies like IBM, British Telecom, and Westinghouse. But I've also worked for a lot of smaller organizations as well, software companies, hardware companies, outsourcing, and so forth. But I always felt that sales has to be a very principled activity. It's so important when I was managing a small group of salespeople that I really impressed upon them not just the ethics of sales, but telling the truth, not without over embellishing, putting your product or service in the very best light, of course. And quite often, a sales rep would come back to me and say, you know, we've got a problem with the delivery of this equipment or delivery of this implementation of software. What do you think we should tell our customer? And I would always say something as bland as, how about the truth? You know, the truth really does work very
Imagine
well.
that, right?
Yeah. And, you know, don't try to make, you know, some excuse about something. Customers are smart. They'll see right through it. But you will gain great respect from your customer by just telling them the out and out truth. So I always use that as an important management principle. And then in terms of tying in theater with sales management as well, treating your employees, and in the case of theater, your cast and your crew, treating them better than anyone else, it will pay huge dividends over time. My company, my theater company, Front Porch Theatricals, Um,
And that's in Pittsburgh?
that's yeah, it's in Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
um, and we have a huge reputation about treating our cast really well. In fact, I was talking to an executive managing director from the Pittsburgh Public Theater, a very large theater in Pittsburgh, and he even said to me, "No, you guys at Front Porch have a terrific reputation to treat actors so well because they tell us when they act in our shows as well."
So you can have success being honest, having integrity, and treating people in that Christianly way that we're taught to do, right?
Absolutely. And I grew up in the Christian Science Church. I had strong Bible and science and health training from some fabulous teachers. And so that basis is absolutely there. And it's the Christian ethic, of course. And so I practiced it and still do practice it in my dual careers.
I think we'll jump to the next question. Um, and in this question, one of the things that kind of sticks out to me as it relates to starting conversations with other people. Look, I jumped ahead once. Sorry. And one of the things that stands out to me in this particular question is, with all the different things that you read about on a daily basis, I mean, how are you staying motivated during these times when you can't walk out the door, or maybe if you do, you're all covered in a mask and no one even knows who you are as you're walking around and you're waving at people, but you're not sure who you're waving to,
Yeah, sure. No, I know. And, my message in this slide is really more for others um, in looking for a job. But I get motivated by just doing a good job, certainly on the sales and sales consulting part of the job. In theater, I just love theater. I am jazzed by theater. I also had a musical career way back in high school and in college. I was in a rock band. I play four instruments. In fact, one of them you can see right here, my guitar and my piano, or two of
Ah,
them here.
yeah.
And so, music motivates me and personally. But when I talk to people who are looking for a job, especially during these times, I remind them that even though they need to talk to a lot of people in order to do that very important skill called networking, I remind them you only really need one job. So in sales, it's important to have many customers. And so you have to prospect and you need lots of people, lots of prospects or potential customers in your pipeline, so to speak. But in going out and finding a job, you only need that one job. And I have given the advice of asking people for their advice, other people in other parts of, so to speak, in a different lane, if you will. So if you have a resume that's all about sales, it's possible that you could pivot to another form of sales, maybe customer service, maybe hospitality. So there's other jobs that you might be able to get beyond just sales. That sales background is really important because basically you're always selling yourself. And that's so important. And certainly from a religious standpoint, listening closely to God for his plan, not just focusing on your plan. You have to take the human steps. Yes, that's true. But you really have to pray and listen for that still small voice that will tell you and advise you and motivate you to find the right path for your next job in your career.
So many so many folks don't realize how important those listening skills are and how valuable hiring managers appreciate that skill set. And during this time, this is a great time to be able to start to develop some of those soft skills, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, and in fact, in my sales consulting, I've done a lot of sales training. And the one principle that is so important in sales is listening to your customer. Um, Any of you who go out and buy a car or buy a house or buy a large appliance of some kind, you can tell that you have a good salesperson selling you if they are listening very carefully for what your needs are. Because it's not about their product, it's about your needs. And listening carefully is so important. But you're right, Robin, that skill is useful in so many parts of life, in relationships, in jobs, in career, whether the job be in sales or not. Listening very, very carefully, spending time to really make sure that you're active listening and understanding what someone is telling you. Very, very important.
Well, I think we should move to this next one, which is, as you kind of alluded to, having those conversations outside of your lane. You bring up some really important points that I think people should reflect on and take a minute and talk about some of these points.
Yeah, learning what works for others is applicable to your own career pursuit. That's true. Um, you know, anyone looking for a job has to create a resume. But I always used to say as a hiring manager, you know what, I want to see your resume just so I get a sense of where you are and what you're doing and how you present yourself in a resume. But I'm not hiring a resume. And those people who are looking for jobs have to recognize that you're not going to get hired exclusively on your resume. I mean, there's a lot of people I know that send out thousands of resumes. You're not going to get a job that way. People don't hire from resumes, but a resume is a ticket to get punched that you can use to get to the next step, and that's to have a meeting, have an interview. And that's really where you have an opportunity to pursue opportunities perhaps outside of your lane. People tend to pigeonhole you into one particular thing, but once you get to an interview, you have an opportunity to present yourself as a person and see the value and have the hiring manager see that value. But just a little tip here, having at least 5 meetings a week when you're out looking for a job, that's so important. Writing down a list of all the people you know and then calling them and trying to get a meeting with them. And then when you do have a meeting, before you leave that meeting, asking for 1 or 2 other references that they might have. So you can build your list of prospects, if you will. But I go back to the ethics and the professionalism of living your career. Always be courteous, always show gratitude. And I was thinking about that point the other day, and I realized I personally am known to my colleagues as someone who doesn't swear. And a lot of people will swear from time to time, and then they'll look at me and they'll say, oh, gee, I'm sorry. And that's because I built an image and an action of being professional. If you were talking to a customer, especially on the first meeting, you wouldn't be saying swear words to them. That's being professional. And I think that I have kept that through my entire career, and I'm proud of that reputation.
Well, I love that. I love the whole idea of integrity. I love the whole idea of thinking about approaching and talking with 5 people a week. I mean, the informational interview is the most underutilized, the most valuable tool people have to be able to have a track to run on, to start a conversation, to have a conversation that's full of intention with some real positive results. So, even if you do have a job, it's really a great opportunity during this time to reach out to people, because in your world, I know certainly in mine, in my professional world, the centers of influence that people have are often, sometimes they overlap, but oftentimes there's a whole new world that kind of opens up of new people and new opportunities to have conversations with folks that are kind of outside your normal wheelhouse where you kind of rock and roll. Wouldn't you think that? Haven't you found that to be the case?
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. When you look at a resume, for example, you kind of try to get a perspective on someone and who they are and what their experience is. But then when you finally meet them in person, it can open up a whole other spectrum of other types of roles. I mean, I've seen situations where someone comes in to apply for a job in sales, let's say, and it ends up that the hiring manager or myself will say, you know what, this person is really would be better suited in a little bit different role, and let me have you pursue that role because it might be better suited for you overall. I also want to mention and apply this to the theater world because my partner and I, my theater partner and I, always interview for a director, a very important role in a theater production, also for a choreographer and a music director. Those are the three key people in the creative team. And when we do interview people in the theater world, it turns out that their qualifications are important, but we're looking more for the person and what humanity they bring to it and what creativity they bring to that particular role. And we end up hiring people that we just really like the way they approach things. Certainly they have to have the right qualifications to be able to do it, but we have always hired directors who we think are up and coming. So maybe they don't have all the credentials that we might need, but they just have this spark, this real interest in what it is that we do in a particular show that they want to direct for us, and a passion. And so we're always looking for passion in that. And I would translate passion from theater into the business world and call that enthusiasm, which, if any of you know, are scholars of words, enthusiasm simply means the spirit within. And so that's what we're always looking for in people, whether it be in theater, key positions, or in business as well.
I like it. So in kind of wrapping up our session and thinking about the top 3 takeaways, talk to us a little bit about these 3 points.
Yeah, when I say take action, you know, if you're in a discussion with someone and it's clear that something has to take place, there is always this this feeling like, well, okay, I'll handle that tomorrow. It's that procrastination thing. But I always like to encourage the people that work for me, and also in my own way, pick up the phone and call someone. Reach out right away. And sometimes I'll maybe just send an email when I maybe should have really just picked up the phone and called someone. Now, quite often you don't always get them on the phone, but taking action, that's what I mean. Don't wait for something else to happen. Be a person of action. And I think that that's really important. We also talked about being honest and tell the truth, being principled, and in the Christian Science world, of course, expressing principle in all situations and dealings with relationships, with issues, with customers, with personal goings on or dealings, even in the theater. Be truthful to people and show really good integrity. And then finally, what's most important is probably the first, not the last, but listening for God's plan. Don't just push ahead with your own plan, making sure that you are listening very carefully, listening to people, and most importantly, listening to God.
I love it. I hope those of you that are listening, if you could just check in with us, are these points and this conversation, is it resonating with you all? And if you have any questions, then be sure and put them in the Q&A as well. As we start to move into our kind of wrap up Q&A session, I thought, Bruce, I would talk to you about a couple of things. One of the questions that I thought was kind of fun is this question came in, and it's like, what if, since you've been home during this stay at home, have you discovered any kind of new thing, or have you rediscovered something in your professional life? I mean, you were sharing with me earlier about having to make an adjustment with the reading from one of your productions that's kind of coming up? Have you had to do some new things that you haven't done or haven't thought about doing?
Well, I think certainly Zoom was a new thing, and now it's not a new thing to most people. I mean, if you watch anything on TV or anything, so many people are using Zoom. I actually used a different program for a long time called GoToMeeting. And when I was a sales advisor and a VP of sales for a software company, we would always use GoToMeeting because you could show your screen like you're doing with Zoom. But Zoom has now become the video conferencing of choice overall. So yes, what being in the theater business, as you can well imagine, theater is being delayed or postponed. My posters up here are the shows that I've done in the past, and we've usually done 2 shows, one in May and one in August every year. But of course, as you can well imagine, we've had to now postpone both of those shows, and we're going to do them next year. But we talked to the director of the shows and of both shows, and we've really felt, you know, we've already cast the show, so we have 16 people in the first show and 24 people in the second show. So to keep that enthusiasm going, we decided to have a table read. And for those of you who are not familiar with theater terminology, that simply means we all sit around a table under normal circumstances and read through the script. And the actors actually act out the scenes by sitting down at their chair. And then if in the case of us, we only do musicals, so they then sing a song. So next Friday night, we're going to have a private Zoom meeting of all 16 cast members, plus a few other folks that are coming along, their director, of course, and so forth. And we've been working on, this is the new part, we've been working on how to figure out how to get music into a Zoom. Well, it's difficult for group singing, but we have figured out how to do solos, and that's going to work out great. And so we're excited about doing that, and we'll do that for the August show later on as well.
That's great. I think that's really, I mean, that, you know, we had a question from an artist who's, you know, working in a studio, and, you know, there may be some idea you might have for artists, you know, because they need to show their work, right? And they can't really do that in the public, at least certainly not at this moment. So, you know, maybe having a live show and conversation about their most recent work that they might have, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. I know that it's not the same, but you could have kind of an art show, and the curator could maybe explain, or their artists themselves could maybe explain what that painting is all about, and invite people to the Zoom show and make it fun. I mean, speaking of how fun, my wife and I have had a Memorial Day picnic for 35 years in Swickley here, and we're not going to be able to have it this year because of the group thing, but we're going to do a Zoom with everybody who has come to our picnics. And so you got to make it fun, and we're going to ask questions and, you know, how are you handling things? And it's going to be a lot of fun. So Zoom can really, or this video conferencing can really be a lot of fun, even for something as difficult to do over the internet as showing paintings.
Great. Well, as we were talking about that, I thought, gosh, you know, I better launch this poll before I forget. And so the poll is for everyone on to be able to give us feedback. It's really important to hear from you and make sure we're learning what we need to learn and make sure that we're on track and delivering what to deliver. So take a few minutes to answer the quick 4 questions. I'd really appreciate seeing and hearing from all of you as it relates to the things that we're doing and how we're working with our Net Effects series. I think I want to ask another question here. I think you've probably covered this pretty well, but some people are asking, you know, what kind of technology should I be thinking about in my office? I mean, you may have some helpful tips. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but are there things that people should be thinking about to make themselves a little more professional in their office, or having to build maybe some new skills to go along with what's happening in the world. I saw today, or in the last couple of days, that Twitter is now telling all its employees that they can all work from their home office, that they're
Right.
not going to be required to come in. And I just talked with Captain Alan Zwick, who was on our episode 1. I talked to him yesterday afternoon, and he was telling me, we were talking about the airline industry again, about people flying and kind of what he's seeing. You know, he says, well, it's starting to open up a little bit, but we're not sure what's going to happen internationally. And we're not really sure if, in fact, it's going to be the same as it was prior. So maybe you can speak a little bit to this questioner's interest.
Yeah, so the question is, what kind of technology would you suggest working at home? And I think certainly the number one thing and the most obvious thing is you're using Zoom now a lot more than we all have ever done. So video conferencing is important. You can't, if you can't meet in an office, you can meet through video conferencing, and I think that that's very important. You know, I can't really think of a software app necessarily that would help or enhance you. I think the basic skills of the Microsoft suite are important to know. I mean, I know some people from time to time aren't particularly good in Excel, but Excel can do a lot of things that Word can do, and vice versa, and a lot more. So I would say there's some basic apps out there that you should always have a good understanding of. But other than that, other than Zoom and your basic Microsoft suite, I really can't think of anything else that is important to have. I have Alexa as a companion. Oops, she's going to speak to me here again if I say that. I have to be careful.
She may turn you off.
Yeah, you never know. So I ask some questions of her from time to time, and I think that's always is good to kind of get answers. What Google has done and browsers have done to change our lives is immense. Think about all the times we use a browser or a Google type of system just to find out information about things. And when you're going for a job or when you're just learning about people or things, I've used LinkedIn when I'm going to go meet someone to see what their picture is, so that I can recognize them if we're supposed to go to a coffee shop. I've also used Google to find out more about that person that I'm about to talk to. And again, from the sales standpoint, finding out more about your prospects. There's a lot of software out there that can really help learn more about the prospects and the people that you want to be targeting for your sales.
Yeah. I know for me, Tara says, hey, a mic might be good. I've been testing out lots of different headphones and different different things, and trying to get the right mix. Adding one of those little dot lights, kind of those little circular lights, can be helpful.
Sure.
So there's little things you can do that aren't very expensive to kind of help a little bit, make things a little bit more professional. As you can see, I have a background, kind of like to have a little fun with the net effect, right?
The net effect, yes.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of fun, and I think it's fun to have. I mean, I think we all need to remember that, we need to help kind of keep things light, and so that's kind of our attempt at kind of keeping things light and straightforward. So I'm going to move along because we got to get things wrapped up, and I know that people are going to want to reach out to you. And so I've posted your career connections, and Bruce has two, because as we talked about, he's had two really successful careers. And so if you're interested in talking to him about the business side of things, technology and sales management, you can reach out through his career connection. We post all of our career connections on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, but I make it real easy by going to the abfcareeralliance.org, and you can click any one of the tabs, Job Seeker, Career Ally, or Student, and you'll see on the right-hand side the Twitter feed. So we have a feed that's always present with the most current, most recent postings on there. And as I said, Bruce has two. He has the theater one. So if you want to request a connection, you want to talk to him, just click that link, and that'll take you right to his career connection, and just kind of go through that process. If you have any questions, there are FAQs on the particular page about how to make that connection. I also want to give a shout out to our friends at Crystal Lake Camps. As you all may or may not know, we have a connection and jobs board that we post jobs, internships, and these career connections on. And Crystal Lake Camp has these 4 positions they just posted yesterday. So I thought I would put those up on the screen and make sure that everyone knows there are companies and organizations hiring, and these are some pretty nice jobs, so that if you or someone you know might have an interest, please let them know to reach out to us and look at these, and we'll get you connected with Crystal Lake Camps. And as always, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and connect with us on LinkedIn. Bruce, my goodness, you were chock full of great info, wonderful ideas, terrific inspiration and suggestions. We thank you so very, very much.
It's totally my pleasure. I really enjoy doing this, and I really enjoy the Albert Baker Foundation and my part in interviewing students. I get so inspired by their enthusiasm and their careers that they have worked out for themselves. But it's a terrific role.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing and helping our students and talking to our students and working with them on their career path and giving them those great suggestions, being a career ally, being willing to do informational interviews and share these ideas. And again, thank you, and thank you to the Albert Baker Fund and that incredible team that we have for supporting these events and supporting this. And thank you to the board for having the inspiration and insight to see how important it is for the Christian Science community to connect with one another and help everyone. So again, thank you so very much. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a terrific session. We look forward to seeing you and being here for episode number 6. So everyone have a wonderful and safe day and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.